there is no roadmap on how to be successful in the industry. And there's also no roadmap on how to be successful in the military either, right? You're going to hold a variety of different roles. You're going to be trained in a specific MOS and then get shipped off to a shore command doing something that you were never trained to do, and you're expected to be successful. And I think that that kind of grit and determination and the work ethic that veterans provide is extremely needed in the cyber industry.
Hello and welcome to the Cyber Pro podcast. Industry leaders share their insights because hackers never sleep. Today we are going to talk to somebody who is a fellow veteran like myself, but also has some really cool nonprofit stuff going on. He's a cyber professional, like he's doing all sorts of fun stuff. So tell us who you are and why you're awesome, sir.
Hey, Rick, two things that I might disagree with is one, I don't know if I'm a professional at anything, but I sure do try. And as far as being awesome, I don't know, man. I guess I work in the cyber. We say cyber enthusiasts these days because we don't know how good we are, especially with, threat actors constantly getting better and better every day and things dramatically changing. I knew nothing about AI 2 years ago. I just stopped calling myself a professional and just that I'm enthusiastic about AI, whatever that is. But yeah, quick background on me. I've been at Microsoft for about 6 years now, a wide variety of roles. I started out as a SOC analyst, just doing tier 3 kind of support and triage. And then I did 2.5 years Microsoft Incident Response team, helping investigate cyber attacks around the world. And then the last 2 years, I've been more of a security strategist, leading the security strategy for the Marine Corps and Department of Homeland Security on behalf of Microsoft.
We just see a lot of people leaning in with Microsoft. And over the years, we've seen Microsoft really drive forward with its security practices in a good way. This is a good positive thing. I know that some people don't love to be beholden to a single vendor. Those that love Apple tend to stick with Apple. Those that love Google tend to stick with Google. Same thing with Microsoft. But I make it in more of a tongue-in-cheek joke that Microsoft historically is so well known in the space, but we never know what their next iteration is going to be. And they obviously are driving with innovation. So it's kind of more of a joke than anything about, are they going to take over the world? They obviously have a lot of licenses out in the world. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to me because I think that talk track has definitely been prominent over the last 7 to 8 years, and then I've seen a huge shift over the last 2 years. Is that Microsoft is there to enable other organizations, maybe by choice, maybe not so much. But when I say that, I mean that the AI race has kind of shown us that there are so many small companies and small organizations that are becoming extremely competitive and that can build products that maybe are more effective at solving specific use cases for clients than Microsoft's products are, especially as threats grow every day. And so Microsoft has kind of made itself as an enabler of other organizations. If you're a company and you operate on the Azure stack, our marketplace and our partnerships are second to none, right? We want to see customers be successful using third parties, right? And I think that's something that we've kind of shifted our focus on the last probably 12 months. So yeah, it's been fun.
Andrew, are there any emerging technologies, trends, approaches that you're just super excited about?
There's something I'm worried about. I'm worried about the problem. I'm excited to see what the solution is. It's this whole idea of how are threat actors using AI? And a lot of organizations have not really put a tab on this. I know Microsoft's digital defense report, I believe the one from last year came out and said that we are not seeing threat actors use AI to conduct cyber attacks, right? And for the most part, I agree with them, but I think that it needs to be defined on what exactly is using AI for a cyber attack mean, right? It doesn't mean that you have this mysterious AI robot that's hacking into your environment. One thing that most people are familiar with is any type of cyber attack that you read about in the news over the last 20 years, especially ones that are perpetrated by nation state threat actors, is usually it's a storyline that says, hey, this nation state has been in this environment for 6 months, for 12 months, for 10 years. And the reason that nation states generally do this is because they're doing reconnaissance. They're collecting information. They're mapping out your entire house, room by room by room. And it takes them that long to figure out where you're most vulnerable. Now, one thing that we're seeing with AI, you can map out an entire environment in less than 5 minutes, right? I work in several different Azure environments, and I actually haven't logged in weeks. I use everything in the terminal window, right? And I plug in Anthropic or Codex, whatever it is, and and I could do everything from a terminal window much faster than I could in Azure, right? And so that is my fear is they're using AI as a tool, just like the rest of the world is. And you don't need to stay in a customer's environment for 2 years or 5 years mapping it out. You can map it out in 5 minutes and see where they're most vulnerable. So that is my biggest fear, I guess. And curious to see how, the industry at large responds to it.
Yeah, I mean, I see kind of two things, my own personal vision and then what I'm hearing from a lot of security service providers. A lot of security service providers, all security service providers have started to tap into AI to try to react to that, exactly your fear. And so everybody has some form of artificial intelligence running, whether it's threat hunting, whether it's aggregating logs, whatever that looks like. The problem is all they've done is swapped out a known commodity of machine learning, which is an artificial intelligence tool, for generative AI, for large language model, for LAMs. And that's fine. That's great. But my personal opinion is we are trying to protect data. And there's certain data that I truly believe needs to be controlled, proprietary. But I don't know about you. I was part of the OPM breach back in the days, and my data currently on the dark web is worth less than a penny. So there's a point, right? Like, at what point do we just say, what data do we not care about? Let's just make sure we're being an efficient, customer facing company. I don't have an answer for that. I really don't. But the fear is that every piece of data that I have is now on the market. But a lot of that data is just kind of worthless.
Yeah.
It's kind of a bold statement, but I don't know. We'll see.
I
I Go ahead.
I was gonna, kind of pull a thread on that one. I think that we're starting to see that it's all about your data. You have to assume that you will have an incident, especially with threat actors using AI as a tool. But again, how much is your data worth? Do you have defense in depth across your entire environment? I think that there's a company, I forgot the name of them, they came out a few days ago with a product. You feed it a CVE, and in 5 minutes, it actually creates you this exploit. And normally, products like this only the three letters had access to, and now it's free, it's public. And so, even looking at my MacBook, which is highly controlled and patched and regulated by my organization, there's still 36 different vulnerabilities that don't have patches, right?
Right.
And I'll, fix those after this podcast. But I think the question is, okay, it is possible and potentially likely that my personal machine does get hacked into, but what do they have access to if they do that? If they do that, right? And so I think that is where the conversation is going to go. Is patching's not enough?
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen in the last year a huge trend. Last January of 2025, I was working with about 5 vendors who would do patch management as a service, right? Everybody would do a vulnerability scan once a month, and then, you'd kind of roll through whatever vulnerabilities you could patch across the way internally. The start of 2026, I work with almost 40 companies that now offer patch management as a service. It's become commoditized. It's become a must do, not a, well, we'll get to it. And I've even heard the cyber insurance companies, the big seven, are looking to add that to their requirement to get cyber insurance. And so I agree with you. Patch management isn't the end all be all anymore. There's so many other things that have to happen. Defense in depth is a good one.
Yeah, I agree with that.
What do you feel is just maybe one or two critical aspects that a company should have to really have a robust cyber posture?
It's a good question. I think that, working in the space for a while, I've had the privilege of working, for big organizations that have the funding, that have 17 different, security teams, right? And even when I did this response at Microsoft, a lot of the Fortune 500 companies that I worked for or consulted with had somebody for everything, right? Now, what Microsoft doesn't do well at is thinking about the organizations that are less than 1,000 employees, right? The SMB space, and not by nature, right? And I think one of the things that we need to get better at is if you're a C-suite executive, right, and you're running the security or your IT staff, and a lot of these companies don't even have a security team, right? They have IT engineers or IT analysts or people who do help desk, right? Is are you able to task them with a list of 5 or 6 things every month to kind of keep a tab on your security posture, right? There's organizations that I know that have less than 200 employees and can't afford several security engineers, but they should have a list of 5 questions every month that the IT manager or the staff can answer, right? To keep a pulse on things before things get bad.
I think that's great. And I think taking that one step further, those 5 questions should be very specific to your organization. I want to see if I can pull this thread a little bit. What do you think an IT department like that can do to get buy-in from leadership who just thinks of them as a cost center?
Yeah. Um, and in some cases, I've heard worse than a cost center, right? The opposite of productivity is a phrase that I've heard thrown out. Um, I think there needs to be some middle ground where IT doesn't necessarily portray what they want to do in terms of cyber risk, right? I think people are tired of hearing about if we don't MFA, right, we're going to get hacked and we're going to get ransomed and it's going to send our company to the ground, right? Those conversations get extremely boring, even as a cyber guy, right? But I think IT needs to be able to address this in a way that says, hey, executive staff, here is what the impact to the business is, or this is how much people are going to complain or not complain, or this is how easily it would be implemented, right? You have to give them a yes or a no. You have to do a lot of the homework for the executives just because they've got a million other things going on. And if you're a 500-person organization and you have 3 people that do IT, you can't do IT's job for them and think about the end user impact. And so I think IT is being forced to grow a little bit and think about the business impact or the end user impact, or how does this get communicated to the rest of the employees, right? When you think about a lot of companies coming out with an AI acceptable use policy, normally that gets drafted by legal, and legal is going to take 2 or 3 weeks to write it up, to analyze it, even though they have no idea what AI is. And so one way that IT can help that conversation is IT should draft it, a rough draft, right? And say, hey, legal, can you sign off on this, right? To get these things expedited.
That's a great use case there. I also love the idea that you talked about impact. I tell a lot of people when I'm consulting with them, the IT team, whether it's the CISO, the CIO, all the way down to just, the typical IT manager, sit down with your executives and ask them, what is the goal of the business? What is the goal of this company? And listen, come up with ideas of how IT can support that goal because now you're in line. But also, the first question back to them is, okay, to meet those goals, can we do it if we had no technology in the environment? You have to force the aha moment to the executives. I have asked that question. I've had one company say, we could run our business without IT, without any technology. And I was floored because they were close to proving to me that they could do it. And then I said, wait, you're a nonprofit. You accept donations through credit cards. That's technology. And they're like, oh, crap.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
yeah. So I love the idea of impact on that side, though.
And another thing is that I think, and I've fallen victim to this, I've worked for a ton of clients across every single industry vertical, and I have no idea how they make money at all. Right. And so it's easy for me to stay in my IT cyber bubble and not understand that I'm working for an insurance company or an energy company or an aerospace company. But I think having that context for what is valuable to the company and how is my salary even being paid, I think those are questions that IT needs to start asking. Um,
Love that. I love that idea. I want to pivot just a little bit because I know that you've come out of the military, you've come out of working for other agencies and things like that. When people hear of those three-letter agencies, when they hear about government nation state actors, it sounds so abstract and far removed. But what are those agencies? What is the government actually protecting on a day-to-day basis?
when you say what is the government protecting, like what is the government protecting from? Interesting. Sorry, I'm answering the question in my head,
Yeah,
and
no,
then
please. This is the best part, right? If I'm
so
making you think, I've come up with a
yeah.
decent question.
Yeah, thinking too hard. So, disclaimer: and anything that I say is my own personal
Right.
beliefs and based on my own personal experience, not representative of the organization I work for. I think that one of the things that we see a lot is disinformation campaigns, right? And I will try not to, put my toe in the political atmosphere, but I think that it becomes very hard for any type of organization, right? Whether that's Microsoft or Google or a nonprofit or a government contractor to get shit done when there's a conflict about what that should be, right? And so tangibly, I think that I see this, every day when we are reading stories or we are reading conversations that are happening, whether that's here stateside in the government space or whether it's a nation state or a state sponsored campaign to discredit the United States. It makes it very hard for us to focus on our job. And even more so, I mean, if you want to go into the political conversation, I think that right or left, right, from a bipartisan perspective, it is very hard for our government to move forward when there are opposing views about a singular topic that based on false information. If that makes sense.
Yeah. No, that's an interesting perspective, and thank you for sharing. You hold a unique vantage point, right? You've worked for one of the largest corporations, or you work for one of the largest corporations in the world. You've worked for, you know, the government, which is awesome. But let's take that back down into the actual world of most organizations. Most companies, as you mentioned, are small to medium sized businesses, right? I mean, it's less than 450 employees down to one employee is 5.6 million of the 6 million that have employees in the United States. That's the average company. And so, how far away from a good security posture are these companies today?
I mean, I'm going to say something spicy. I don't think small, medium, the SMB space is anywhere better or worse than some of these big companies, right? I think in some cases they could be less of a target, right? Because they have less money. When you think about ransomware extortion groups, they're going after organizations that can pay them, right? And that's usually not a company with less than 100 employees. So I think they're all in varying degrees of their security posture. One of the things that I really enjoy about this space is that they're very agile and they can move quickly and you tell them what needs to be done and they're very good at getting it done because there's a lot less red tape and there's a lot less lanes of ownership that I think you'll see in a big company. Is I've worked for some and didn't realize that there's a vulnerability management team separate from a security team, separate from the IT staff. So, I mean, there's some organizations that I've worked for and they've got 10 or 15 different cyber IT staff, right? And so pushing any type of recommendation or advice or policy has to be signed off by 4 or 5 directors, right?
Pivot to your feel good, awesome thing you're doing for veterans. Talk to me about Operation MOS. What are you up to with that, and why is this important for our industry?
My favorite part of the podcast. Backstory on me, I went to the Naval Academy. We always say I went to a small community college in Annapolis, Maryland. The real ones understand. I had orders out to, long story short, I had orders to Japan out on Antib out there. I was super excited. And then a week before commission, got med dropped. About 2.5 months later, was able to somehow trick Microsoft into hiring me, and I've been here ever since. Over that 2.5 month period where I was unemployed and looking for a job, I kind of built my own network of veterans who helped me in every different aspect of the job search, right? Whether it was reviewing my resume, giving me career coaching, telling me what the cyber arena even was, right? On paper, I got a degree in cyber from the Naval Academy, but in reality, I think I've got a degree in leadership and I didn't pay attention in any of my cyber classes. Right? And I had no idea what the Naval Academy prepares you to be leaders, not necessarily go work in industry. So I was lost, to say the least. Over the last 6 years, I've mentored, a little over 300 veterans in every aspect of their career transition, right? And I had the humbling realization about a year ago that, Rick, if you're a transitioning veteran and I'm giving you advice or I'm coaching you, you might not take anything from what I have to say. Maybe because it's the way that I come off, maybe because I'm not resonating with you, maybe because of the weather. Maybe you're at a different part of that transition than I thought you were. I realized that probably, anywhere from 40 to 60% of the calls that I have with veterans might not actually help them at all. And I'm just wasting their time. And so I challenged myself to see, what if I could build a program or an app that guarantees every time that someone interacts with me, they get something out of it. right? They get a tangible deliverable. And it's something that I push my teams to do all the time in the industry is what are we actually doing here, guys? What do we actually do today? So I built this app, long story short, called Operation MLS, which its goal is to help veterans get through the entire veteran transition process as quick and as efficiently as possible. You go in there, you build a resume, right? I've got AI built into it, right? It'll take your user inputs, translate it, um, and then it'll give you an industry formatted resume. From that, it'll automatically generate your LinkedIn for you. You just copy and paste. And then one thing I'm building out, I should be finished in the next couple of days, is if you want to tailor your resume to a specific job, the whole myth of an ATS system, right? And so you could do that as well. Future iterations are going to have interview prep where you say, hey, mine's Rick. I've got an interview next Tuesday as a business program manager, and it'll take your fit reps, it'll take your resume, it'll take whatever information you give it. It'll take the job description and it will actually build you a document that only you can use that says, Rick, you should actually talk about that military experience from 2012 to 2014 because this is directly applicable to this company. You might not realize it, but here it is. And the whole platform's free for veterans, right? I, I always joke that I've got a full-time job. Don't need to make any money off veterans trying to find their next job.
Love this. I love Operation MOS. I love what you're doing. I think the biggest thing for me when I hear from companies saying, we want to hire veterans, great. That's a great thing. And then they come back and say, we don't know how their skills will transfer into us. That's what you're doing, right? You're teaching the not just the veteran, but you're teaching the actual companies over time. This is that transferable skill. They're going to tell you what that's good for. So, why do you think veterans are uniquely positioned to succeed in cybersecurity?
I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but the industry sucks. Super shitty. It's hard. It's always changing.
Super tough.
And there is no roadmap on how to be successful in the industry. And there's also no roadmap on how to be successful in the military either, right? You're going to hold a variety of different roles. You're going to be trained in a specific MOS and then get shipped off to a shore command doing something that you were never trained to do, and you're expected to be successful. And I think that that kind of grit and determination and the work ethic that veterans provide is extremely needed in the cyber industry. I've had the privilege of working with several veterans who I don't think they ever turn on a computer during their active duty time. And they're some of the most proficient, intelligent, hardworking people that I know in the industry now. It took them 2 or 3 months to get spun up, but after that, they've been off to the races and they're great.
Yeah, for me, it's always been skill development, right? One of the things that, whether you agree or disagree when you go to the military, they break you down and they teach you how to do certain skills like a habit. It's a muscle memory thing. And I truly believe that when I got out, I became exceptionally good at volleyball, a sport I've never played before because I picked it apart and I picked out every skill just like the military taught me to do. And I think that's the same thing for cyber. They come out, like you said, never turn on a computer during their duty time. And all of a sudden, they're one of the highest performing cybersecurity professionals.
Yeah. And I'd like to touch on another point as well is, Operation MOS, as someone who's been in the industry for, 6 years now, and I work at a company that, the hiring bar is, again, I tricked them into hiring me, but the hiring bar is pretty high. And there's a certain way that they want you to interview and a certain way that they want your resume to look. I will say that a resume is never going to get you a job. Your LinkedIn will never get you a job either. Networking will. And to your point, Rick, upskilling will as well. And so I get really frustrated when I talk to veterans and they tell me that they've been working on this resume for 4 months, right? Probably 20 to 25 hours, just sending it to everybody. Everyone's giving their feedback on it. Instead of spending that 20 to 25 hours actually networking with people to understand what their day job is like so they can communicate their interests, their skills in an interview, right? And so Operation MLS was made to be extremely efficient. My goal is that any veteran that uses the platform is done with their first resume in less than 30 minutes. It's perfectly formatted. It's exactly what Microsoft and other big companies want to see. And you can take that, you can go to a job interview, you can go to a job fair, you can go network with other people doing the things that will actually get you a job, right? Point of frustration. And I think most organizations have the best intent. I think there's way too much focus spent on resumes, right? And LinkedIn and resume coaching. And I think, and it's funny because I built a program to do that, but I built a program that one is free and two doesn't take a lot of time. And so I think more focus should be on networking and upskilling to transition.
No, I love it. One thing I recommend to not just veterans, just anybody in the cybersecurity space, reach out, industry folks, and just say, you know what? I know you might be hiring in the future. You might be hiring now. I've applied, but I don't want to have an interview with you. I want to have a 15-minute conversation about what I should be doing to make myself marketable for a company like yours in the future. And I don't know about you, like if somebody approaches me like that, I don't typically in my current job hire for cyber professionals anymore. But when I used to, if somebody approached me like that, I'd give them 15 minutes. I'd be like, all right, you got 15 minutes. What do you want to know? This is not an interview. I don't know if you're going to make it past that stage, but what do you want to know? And more often than not, I didn't end up hiring that person. They didn't make it through the initial interviewing stages. Maybe they were too young, maybe they were too inexperienced. But 18 months down the road, they reach back out and say, hey, I've gotten some experience. I'm doing this now. I see you have another position open, and I know you took 15 minutes. Can I take 15 minutes to tell you where I'm at today? I've hired almost all of those people, right? It hasn't been a lot, but that person that reaches back out in 18 months, that networks, that experience, they're the ones that are going to get every job they want eventually.
Yeah. Uh, Totally agree with that. And one of the things that I encourage veterans to do when I'm talking to them is reach out. And if you're talking to Rick, ask Rick, what does the day in the life look like? And for myself, I will actually screen share my calendar, depending on which calendar it is, right?
Right, right.
With a veteran and say, hey, this is what my day job looks like, right? 8 a.m. That meeting kind of sucked. Not gonna lie. Here's what we talked about. And here's why I didn't want to be at that meeting, but here's the conversation that we had. And then the 9 o'clock meeting is one of my favorites and go into detail about every single thing. So one of the things that Microsoft does well, and I joke that sometimes we do it too well, is we're very good at hiring potential, very good at hiring the potential and personality, and not always caring if you check all the boxes. And sometimes I laugh and like sometimes we should probably focus on the requirements of the job, guys. But for veterans, I think that you should be showcasing to your hiring manager your potential to do well in that role. And the only way that you understand what your potential is to understand what the job requirements are. And so 30, 60, 90-day plan is great, but it needs to be extremely specific. And when you're interviewing for a role, you should be able to mention all of your weaknesses as strengths because you understand where your gaps are and you have a plan to remediate those.
So you've said the best solutions come from the messiest challenges. What's a moment in your career where everything was breaking and it led to a breakthrough?
Yes. Trying to figure out a story that
Tough
I can
question.
share.
You
Yeah.
gotta think, right? Yeah, which story works, right?
Yeah. I think one of the ones that comes to mind is, and this is public, so I can share this one. Uh, Nation state cyber attack against Albania back in, I want to say 2022. You go go to news, you'll see all the stuff. The Iranians launched a cyber attack against Albania that shut them down for several days. I was the first person in the United States to be made aware of that. I was spending some quality time with my grandma out in Arizona before I went overseas, and I was on call for Microsoft's incident response team Saturday night, July 15th, and talked to the Albanian government through a translator. Craziest night of my life. And that was an extremely tense situation. I think for myself and the rest of the team, we eventually sent individuals on site and we were there, boots on the ground for about 6 months. Because this was not a, name your favorite gas station brand. We got hit with a cyber attack, right? We're going in and, you know, rebuilding their environment. This was a potentially, in the eyes of the White House, an act of war, right, against a NATO country. And so I think understanding that the context was very important for us to remember that for the guys from my team that I sent there, that this was not just your typical company and we had to act and respond differently. In the mind of the Albanians, they were under attack. A lot of their civilian population was directly impacted by this. But I think, from that, huge credit to the guys on the ground. We built a very strong partnership with the Albanian government that, the United States at large still benefits from today.
Love it. Thank you for sharing. Drew, we're going to switch over to some shorts, trying to get, that 30-second quick hit for us. Really kind of lean in on this. So, a couple quick questions for you here. The first one is, what should cybersecurity actually protect for most organizations?
Cybersecurity should protect your data, right? Specifically your employee data, because those are the ones that when an employee goes to work for a company, they are trusting you. And I think first and foremost, cybersecurity should protect the individual user.
What's one mistake almost every company makes when it comes to security?
Thinking that there's a finish line. In security, there is no finish line. It's a constant journey. People say there's light at the end of the tunnel, and that tunnel actually never ends.
That's amazing. I haven't even thought about that. That's a great answer, Drew. Thank you for sharing that. What's one skill that instantly makes someone hireable in cyber?
Commitment, right? The ability to stay committed to the mission, to the team. Someone who is going to be there at 9 o'clock at night or 5 in the morning when shit hits the fan.
I love it. I'm going to pull that thread a little bit. If somebody's looking to break into cyber today, I mean, you work with a lot of veterans that are looking to break in. We've worked with a bunch of people over time. What skills matter most and which ones are overrated?
This one's going to be spicy. I think the skills that are overrated are the ones that you get from taking certification courses, right? I've been in the industry 6.5 years, and I think there is a lot of value in education to be taken from certifications, but I also have zero of them. All of my experience has been from sitting at a desk, going through a SIEM or an XDR solution and hunting for bad guys. I think that the more hands-on experience you can get, the better. Right? I think you should expect that any type of interview you have, they may ask you to demo something, right? Microsoft and CrowdStrike combined have a massive share of the XDR platform. The XDR is the core of protecting any organization from a cyber attack. Have you ever logged in to one? If you haven't, I question if you're ready to be in the field.
Love that. I love that thought process. I'm going to add to the spiciness because I do have some certs and I was recommended to go sit for my CISSP and I chose not to because while I respect those of you that have CISSPs, you basically are great at going through a boot camp, reading a manual and regurgitating that on a test. That doesn't mean that it's not important. That doesn't mean that you gained a lot of wisdom over your 5+ years to get recommended for that. But the only certification I've ever used and found worthy was either an industry one, like I got certified by Paulo, right? Or one of those type of things, or certified ethical hacker. That was the one certification that actually stood out for me. And I'm well educated in the world of cybersecurity, and I'm with you. I'm very with you when it comes to this. Unfortunately, it's usually the ATS, the HR scraper, right? Do you have
Right.
something? Can you show it? Once you get to the actual hiring manager, I love the idea of, hey, we work with this type of EDR. Have you ever logged in? If I could get you access to a demo, could you show me how you would play with it? Man, that'd be a on the job or on the interview training. That'd be awesome.
Right. It's funny. The CEH is the one certification that I do want, just because I heard the materials is great and it's also a badass name. So, um,
You get access to a lab and you get to go like break things. So
yeah,
it's fun.
ethically.
Ethically, yes, white or grayish. So, all right, a couple quick questions on this one. So, the question is about what people are getting wrong. So, think about that as you go forward with this. But what's a belief about risk that you think organizations get completely wrong?
What is a belief about risk that organizations get completely wrong? I think similar to my comment earlier is I think that you can reduce it to zero, right? And you don't have to accept risk, right? And I think the truth is that you will have to accept risk in some part of your organization. Question is at what cost?
Take that one step further. What is a belief about leadership that organizations completely get wrong?
That being a manager means you're a leader.
I love
That
that.
I think we've heard that a million times from the military. I think that, or a title makes you a leader, or the fact that you're leading a project Makes you a leader, I guess, to go deeper than that.
What's a belief about resilience that most organizations get wrong?
Oh, that's hard. I think organizations generally believe that resilience indicates you will never be broken. But I think resilience means when you do get hit, when you do get broken, when things do fail, how quickly do you bounce back? I've seen some organizations that get fully ransomed, right? Ransomware attack, and 24 hours later, they're back up and running like it never happened. That's resilience.
All right. The final question, the fun question. Drew, why do you love being a cyber professional? And why should people want to become one?
I love the people. I am not as excited about the actual cyber part of it as I am about the people that I work with every day. People in this industry are a little crazy. You're constantly learning new things. You will never be good at your job. And I think we look out for each other. I think we understand that things are dynamic and things change, even across companies, right? I'm not just speaking specifically about my employer, but I've got friends all across the industry. And I think that those friendships and the people that I work with, that's why I love this industry.
I love it. For veterans, all of Drew's information will be out there when it comes to Operation MOS. Other than that, Drew, thank you so much for what you're doing for the veterans. Thank you so much for being an awesome cyber professional. And thank you for being on the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Rick. I appreciate you having me.